What's happening, everyone? Anthony Marsh Jr. on PR Lost Galaxy 2014, or of course, my Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film channel. If you're watching it on the YouTube channel, you know, that's what this is for. And PR Lost Galaxy 2014 for miscellaneous Power Ranger Sentai content, but whatever. I know I'm having some sort of identity legacy crisis of sorts, you would like to call it. But basically, over the course of my year-long, you can say, hiatus, the reason why I've been so busy in 2019 was I was busy collecting these. And of course, the other Rangers I was trying to collect when we had the license from Bandai expiring, and then Hasbro, Almighty Lord Hasbro taking over our long-running superhero tokusatsu franchise that we loved for so long, since 1993. And thus, my friends, I'm only doing the first two teams of Bandai's Power Rangers Legacy Collection of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Power Rangers Zeo. I do, of course, have the Space Rangers, none of the Dino Thunder Rangers, but until I get all of the In-Space and Dino Thunder characters, I will do reviews on them too. But for now, let's stick to Mighty Morphin and Zeo. And of course, the reason I'm doing this is because, of course, the Lightning collection figures of Mighty Morphin, well, at the time of this review, Billy's Lightning collection figure won't be out until June 1st. I know some people have already pre-ordered that on Hasbro Pulse's website already, but let's go back in time a little bit before Hasbro took over Power Rangers, and go back to when before we got the Lightning collection, there were these figures. Now, looking back on these, now, I took a long time to get these figures because they were, of course, going to cost me an arm and a leg. And luckily, this is how I did this. So, it all started back in 2017, around my 25th birthday, 3 years ago. When I started collecting the Legacy figures, I started with the Pink Ranger of Mighty Morphin first, and the Yellow Ranger back-to-back. So basically, I got Kimberly and Trini back-to-back. Then later in September of 2017, I got Billy, and that was it for a while until I got Jason and Zach 2 years ago in 2018. Because actually, in fact, another reason why I had not put out any Power Ranger toy reviews in 2018 was because, if you remember my little backstory why I've been gone from doing toy reviews for a long time, was because you should know my issues with the 5-in-1 Megazord set for that 2017 Power Rangers movie, which was a staggering 40-minute review, and when I look back on it, I haven't thought highly of it. But luckily, of course, with the Legacy line, it's finally the very first time I actually got all the Power Ranger figures in a particular team wave or so in one review. Last I've done that was back with the Megaforce figures, which were those, 3 of them being regular Megaforce figures, and then 2 of them being Metallic Force figures of those. And I wanted to do the Ultra modes, but it's too late now. Hasbro took over, years later. Here I am, 2020, and what the hell have I been doing since? So, and then, luckily last year, in time before these were going to go away, and, Hasbro wants to burn these to hell because they were good in the beginning, but now when you look back on them with their imperfections, they're not all that great. Last year, I actually finally managed to get both of Tommy's Green and White Ranger figures, and finally collected all of Mighty Morphin. As for Zeo, on the other hand, as much as I was so hyped up for Zeo, and then when I finally got all 6 of them, I was left sorely disappointed. But luckily, when you look at them later, I had, of course, did some repainting on them, but of course, with a Sharpie marker. But of course, the gold paint and gold melted smears are now getting all over my fingers every time I touch them now. If only if I had some different kind of gold paint that could fix the Zeo Legacy figures. But of course, Lightning Collection, I will get the Lightning Collection Zeo Rangers soon, but I want to focus on MMPR and other seasons before I get the Zeo again. But yeah, so basically I did, of course, here's another rundown. I bought pink, yellow, blue, red, green, and white off of Amazon. Whereas, luckily enough, I got my Mighty Morphin Black Ranger back in 2000. Whoops, yeah, you can fall down all you want because, of course, nobody cares about the White Ranger that much. Luckily, unlike the other Rangers on Amazon, the Mighty Morphin Black Ranger's Legacy figure is the only one I bought at my local FYE store, you know, here in Gaithersburg, before my local FYE at Lake Forest Mall shut down just early last year. Luckily, I got the Black Ranger, Mighty Morphin Black Ranger from FYE in early 2018, and it was the only one they had, because back when Toys R Us, of course, was open, I couldn't find most of these figures. Instead, most of Toys R Us, where I live at, and still back when these figures were available, most of all of these figures were never available at my local Toys R Us back when these were out, and when Bandai still had the license to Power Rangers. The only Legacy figures that they kept selling was In Space Yellow, a little probably a Mighty Morphin Pink to a degree, but not really, and Ninja Storm Blue. And that's why I had to resort getting all of these off of Amazon, except for the Mighty Morphin Black Ranger. Okay, for the Zeo guys, I know I'm going on a little too long with this, but for Zeo, how I got these, I got the Red Ranger first, which is also Tommy. Then I got the Gold Ranger second. So basically, Mighty Morphin Red and Black and Zeo Red and Gold were the only Legacy figures I collected in 2018, because you should know how I felt back in 2018 for those who watched videos I posted that year, leading up to my, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film magnum opus that took me a whole decade of my time that I'm not going to get back of. But I digress. And then last year, when the Legacy line was discontinued and we were already moving on to Hasbro's Power Rangers Lightning Collection, I managed to get the rest of the Zeo Rangers, and when I do the In Space Legacy review, I got the red and pink Space Rangers following when I got the Zeo Ranger Legacy figures last year. So this is what I've been doing for the last 2 years, even following the midst of me putting out my magnum opus fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena in 2018. So basically, this is what I've been doing for the last 2 years, not putting out new Power Ranger toy reviews, and aside from personal issues, I had been busy trying to collect all of these guys. So luckily, guys, I'm here to finally do this review with you. So let's go with the team that started it all before I do their Hasbro figure variants, and then when these guys come out with the remaining team. And luckily, if things go swell, I will try and do In Space for the Legacy line, what's left of In Space. And I might do a custom Silver Space Ranger review when I get another, because basically what I'll just do is just buy another red Space Ranger Legacy figure and just paint that as the Silver Ranger, and there you go, or something of the like. Since we didn't get we were originally supposed to get a Legacy Collection Silver Space Ranger for the In Space Rangers before the license ran out last year, because, well, and the rest of the Psycho Rangers to a degree. And Dino Thunder, I will do the Dino Thunder Rangers when I ever get the chance on eBay, mostly. So I'll probably just buy, since the Dino Thunder Rangers are basically out of stock on Amazon. I know I'm probably fibbing right there, but I know they're probably still available somewhere on Amazon. I'll probably just buy the Dino Thunder Rangers off of eBay, since I just want to get this over with, and on with the rest of Hasbro's Lightning Collection, and just put an end and put this Legacy line to rest. But now, it's Morphin time! Okay guys, on to the team that everyone loves and I love too. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the Legacy line. Oh yeah, the reason why I'm putting this out, I just want to let everyone know, Hasbro is going to start now doing Lightning Collection morphers, and if you want to get Hasbro's Power Rangers Lightning Collection Power Morpher, pre-order now on Hasbro Pulse. But I'm not sponsoring them or anything, but this is, a Bandai thing, even though I reviewed the movie White Ranger Morpher 5 years ago. Anyway, so Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, before I do the Lightning Collection, I want to be honest with you on these Legacy figures. After I finally got them all, they were good, but they wasn't great. I mean, I've noticed, of course, back long before I even had these reviews, I know when I saw so many other people's reviews of these figures, back when these were available and back when Bandai was still the licensee of Power Rangers for the toys, I had been wanting to get all of these, you know, in one wave, but back then I didn't have a lot of money to buy them all per team, so that's why I had to do one Ranger at a time. And yes, I had to buy them an arm and leg. Well, except for pink, yellow, and blue, like I said earlier. But for red, black, white, and green, I had to buy them for an arm and a leg. But, well, actually with the exception of the Red Ranger, but we'll get to him when we get to him. So let's go ahead and go through them all based on the order of the order that I purchased them and see what I thought of them. First up is the original Pink Ranger, Kimberly Hart herself. She was my first of the Legacy figures I bought back 3 years ago, for those who followed me on social media about me on my journey on collecting these. The Pink Ranger one, you see, you know, as this was my very first of the Legacy collection line of figures that I bought with my own money, of course. The Pink Ranger is probably my favorite color-wise, you know, in terms of the color balance of that hot flaming pink, and that's what I loved about this version of Kimberly. Although when I do get the Lightning Collection Pink Ranger of Kimberly, with the, you know, Kimberly head that oddly looks like Amy Jo Johnson, when I do a review on that, I'm going to do some comparisons of Hasbro's Pink Ranger versus Bandai's Pink Ranger. But just the thing is, I liked it this one before, you know, a lot more before the Hasbro one came out. But although, if you notice something, I've noticed when looking back on these toys, when I play with them a little bit, when you know, getting these figures, you know, getting them out of the box can be a little, you know, frustrating. You know, sometimes you have to be aware that, you know, when you get these out of their packages, or if you want to keep them in the box, if you know your preference, you know, some of their arm and leg joints will be bent or stiff, and that's something you need to watch out for. Same go for when I do future Lightning Collection collecting eventually. But when you look at the Pink Ranger, I actually liked this one a lot more slightly than the Legacy one, although the Legacy one is, from what I'm hearing from a lot of people I know that I'm friends with in the fandom and stuff, they say that the Lightning figure is a lot better, but the Legacy figure was okay. But then of course you notice one particular detail. Due to the fact that pink, black, and blue Mighty Morphin came with In Space Red and Yellow, they really, you know, fans really were, you know, outraged about the silver belt, much like how people like to complain about, you know, the Green Ranger having the silver stripe back in Dino Thunder, but I digress. But I just think that they did drop the ball not painting in the belt to be white. That's another thing I've noticed, because, well, I like the figure for what it is, but if only if I had some white out or something to fix this, but, well... another thing that people have complained about with the female body molds that we had when these figures were made was that when you look at the yeah, and also this video is not for kids, this is for adult fans like me. When you look at the breast size of the female Rangers, they have complained that the breasts were a bit too big. Luckily Hasbro's Lightning Collection, the breast size on, you know, the bust size on the females are not, you know, like this. But I understand this was back when they were doing the muscular superhero physique thing on Power Ranger figures, because, you know, knowing Bandai back when they still did figures like this. And I really like this Pink Ranger figure a lot. Now it seems like all these years after I had this figure later, I'm trying to get some movements onto her leg, but see, that's the thing with a lot of the pink and yellow Ranger figures that had skirts from Bandai. You know, despite the restricted leg movement, you can't really do much with MMPR Pink from Legacy. But this is why when I get the Lightning Collection Pink Ranger, when I do in the future, I'm going to definitely do some serious comparison with Bandai versus Hasbro with these figures. But although what I liked about this was that they were being more close to the TV show's look as a little as possible for like the helmet sculpts on these characters. And you know, as much as, you know, Kimberly is a massive fan favorite, you know, for out of all Pink Rangers, knowing the fact you can't top Kimberly Hart, the original Pink Ranger, you can't top Amy Jo Johnson as the original Pink Ranger. I get it. Even though I love Kimberly too, but it's just, you know, I wish there was more to her. Oh yeah, I gotta put the focus on, you know, my camera with the focus at times. You know, I really wish that they could have gave her more leg movement than what we got, because the leg movement they gave Kimberly, as well as for Kat and Tanya's legacy figures, and Ashley and Cassie's, and Kira's and Tori's, is that the skirts are molded onto the figure, and that's why, you know, the upper leg parts, like I've, you know, been showing you, you can't get much leg movement, but yet you can do some leg movement on her lower arm, but again, that's about it. I love this Pink Ranger figure, but although, again, Lightning Collection figure is probably superior than that, but again, it's just, I do like the color of the Pink Ranger, because I just love how hot and sexy Kimberly looks with that hot flaming pink color she got going for it. But yeah, because yeah, there's Kimberly. Second and foremost, to aforementioned mostly, Trini, the original Yellow Ranger. Also Aisha, the Ranger that replaced her, but most people associate this with Trini than Aisha. The only time when Aisha's the original Yellow Ranger is with Boogie with the Bear, but I digress. Anyway, so Trini, like Kimberly, when I bought this back in 2017 on Amazon, she wasn't that expensive neither, but unlike right now with her Hasbro Lightning Collection release, the legacy figure of her wasn't so hard to get back when I got this 3 years ago. But yeah, Lightning Collection, Mighty Morphin Yellow. Oh god, I understand diehard collectors are seriously buying her up like freaking crazy. And that's why I think I didn't want to pre-order it, because then fans would, you know, go berserk about her. Now, unlike my Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger, the Yellow Ranger legacy figure actually is the only female figure of the legacy line where you get more articulation and more movement from arms and legs, more especially on the legs, because you can do a lot more with the Yellow Ranger with the leg movement. And of course, when I compared this with the Lightning figure, when I ever do get Mighty Morphin Yellow in the Lightning line, I'm going to do some, you know, also serious comparisons, because you see the best of the two females for MMPR is of course Trini, because, you know, well, everybody's all about Kimberly. I would, you know, some of us have to realize Trini was great too, but you gotta understand that, you know, she's the only female Ranger in Yellow is the only female Ranger in Mighty Morphin without a skirt. Same go for like Lost Galaxy, Lightspeed Rescue, Time Force, and Wild Force Yellow Rangers whose Sentai counterparts were male, because that would explain why the Yellow Ranger in, you know, the original Mighty Morphin Yellow Ranger in the Sentai of Zoo Ranger was previously a man, because of course, you know, of course we gotta have 2 girls and 4 guys in the group, but you know, that's the reason, because, well, that's why they have to do you know, 2 girls on a Power Ranger team, and that's why most of the majority of a lot of the Yellow Rangers and Power Rangers are all female and not much a male, but I shouldn't complain and be sexist about it. But now I've noticed another difference when I bought Kimberly and Trini's legacy figures back to back September 3 years ago, that being 2017. When you look at the belts for both of them, one is white and one is silver, so go figure, because knowing at least with Trini's figure you get a white belt, while Kimberly sadly got the silver one, but this is why people have wanted to get the Lightning figures, and this is why we waited until Hasbro got Power Rangers and fix all of Bandai's sins and mistakes when doing figures like this, because even though of course also the legacy figures were a little too big compared to the Marvel Legends, and that's why Hasbro decided to do the Lightning collection to be more in line in scale with the Marvel Legends Star Wars Black figures that Hasbro does, and even Hasbro's other franchise G.I. Joe with their triumphant return with their G.I. Joe Classified line. I may do G.I. Joe toy collecting, because I've told you back or I don't think I have told anyone, even on this channel's regard, that I used to be a fan of G.I. Joe, and of course if it weren't for those 2 live action movies and you know how bad they were, that's why I stopped collecting toys of G.I. Joe and waited until once they did 6-inch G.I. Joe figures, but I digress. But this is Power Rangers, not G.I. Joe. But okay, put Kimberly away. I know I'm just rambling on. Yeah, because with Trini's legacy figure you get all of this great articulation, because what surprised me me was that you get to do a lot of great articulation with Trini for this figure, well, in this regard. And I know Lightning Collection, the Lightning Collection figure has way more better articulation, but this was equally just as good. And that's why, personally, for me, Trini's figure for this line was the best for me, mostly in regards to the two female Rangers we had for MMPR from this line of toys back when these were made, because you get so much articulation. It is just beautiful just playing with her like this, because unlike Kimberly, you can do so much more articulation with her, but you know, with all the arm pivots, ankle pivots, and then abdomen circulations and stuff, and, you know, turning, you know, head around, because it's just look at it. But though, when I got my Yellow Ranger, she does, of course, have a bad leg. It was either this leg or that leg, but no, it was this leg, and that's why every time when I put these figures and have them posing on my closet shelf, she just keeps falling over, and that's why I have to keep picking her up, because then even she would knock the others down, and just that's another thing I didn't like about these legacy figures, is the standing stances when you put them on certain surfaces, because that's what I didn't like about that. Now, although Hasbro's Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Yellow looks great, but I thought that when Bandai when Bandai did the what was I going to say? When Bandai did the legacy figures, they were trying to capture the look of how they looked on the show, you know, with the helmet sculpts. Personally, I thought Bandai did a good job also on the helmet sculpts for the Yellow Ranger, but when I get the Hasbro figure, I'm going to notice some differences with Bandai versus Hasbro on the Yellow Ranger helmet sculpt. And yeah, because and you know, even though I would say when I do get the Yellow Ranger for the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Yellow, it'll probably just be equally as good as this, but I know Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Yellow is pretty much mostly better at this point. So yeah, that was Trini, and rest in peace to E-Train. Now, on the Billy, the original Blue Ranger, and the only time Billy was a Ranger, even though he was no other color, because one of the greatest things about Billy was that he is the only Ranger out of all of the entire Mighty Morphin team that had kept the same power and the same suit for 3 seasons in a row. Even though most people wish Billy was the Gold Ranger and Zeo, but if the stuff with David Yost didn't happen behind the scenes, but, well, oh well. Real life kind of tells the story, I guess. So, Billy is another Mighty Morphin figure I bought all in 1 month, along with Kimberly and Trini back in September 2017. And surprise, surprise, he was not that expensive when I bought him off of Amazon 3 years ago. That being this. You know, like the pink and black Rangers and the wave of figures that he came from with the other 2 Space Rangers, Billy is another Ranger that fell victim with a silver belt. And I just don't understand why the heck they didn't even bother painting the belt to be white, because knowing the fact, you know, the suits have to be the proper color and has to be accurate. But you know, it seems like I'm starting to become a complete MMPR purist, like all of those older than me that had collected a lot of MMPR stuff, because of course. I do like this Blue Ranger, but the thing is, what I've noticed when I got my MMPR Blue, does anyone have this constant issue, or is it just my MMPR Legacy Blue figure? It's just his legs and arms make this squeaky sound, which is pretty irritating, and this is why I kind of like this figure of Billy the least. I hope when I get the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Blue Ranger, when that comes out, it better not have this issue, I swear. But it seems like it's so squeaky. You can hear the squeaky plastic moldage and meldage, or whatever you like to call it, on him, because I don't see why he has to make such squeaky leg movements. I mean, is it just on my Billy, or is it on everyone else's too? I don't know, because again, I never reviewed these figures before, and also this is my first time I collected all of MMPR, even though this is closest to the accuracy of the figures as possible. But wait until I do Lightning Collection though. But it's just, you know, And also, I just also want to let everyone know, in terms of my history of collecting MMPR toys when I was growing up as a kid. When Mighty Morphin was out, I know we had those bulky looking action figures we had of them back in the 90s, like the flip head figures and the 12-inch figures, like, you know, especially the ones they made for the first Power Rangers movie back when the toys for that was out 25 years ago. I never did get the figures of Pink, Blue, and, you know, Yellow Mighty Morphin when I was a kid, with a lot of when it came to the action figure side of things, and definitely not the Pink Ranger because well, but luckily I find since I got all of the Rangers of MMPR, I actually managed to get all of them as possible, especially when I get to green, white, red, and black later, because these three I never had toys of, but this is the very first time I actually started owning Pink, Yellow, and Blue MMPR, as opposed to all the different White Ranger, Red Ranger MMPR toys I had so far. So yeah, because even though I have the Legacy movie figures of them, but this is the Legacy Collection Legacy Mighty Morphin figures based on the television show, the version of the Mighty Morphin we all love, as opposed to that shitty 2017 movie. And the good thing I didn't get the Legacy figures of the 2017 movie Rangers, because they're just not worth my time or my money. So anyway, Billy looks good, but even though that silver belt is a little irritating at times. Now on to my main man, Zach the Black Ranger, and at times my other boy in the black suit, Johnny on Bosch, as Adam as the Black Ranger sometimes, but basically I know most G1ers only prefer Zach as black, but I prefer Adam as black, because basically Adam became, you know, over time when I rewatch MMPR, Adam did become my favorite of my favorite of the MMPRs, simply because, well, in fact, now Zach was great, but Adam basically did it for me the most, because he had this suit longer than Zach, because that's saying much, because Adam, when he became the Black Ranger after replacing Zach, he had the, you know, shared the Lion Thunder Zord, but he had the Frog Ninja Zord and the Black Shogun Zord. But although Zach, I was about to say Rocky or other names, basically, how would you feel if I don't know, but Zach basically is what most people associate this suit the most, just like with Trini as the Yellow Ranger. I should have said the same thing about the Pink Ranger in terms of Kimberly versus Kat when it came to MMPR, since I finally got all 7 Mighty Morphin, even though I wish I had that, you know, Dragon Shielded Red Ranger Legacy figure, but, you know, oh well. But the Black Ranger from the Legacy line, well, see, I would say the Black Ranger Legacy figure for MMPR in my book is better than the Blue Ranger, because you see this was basically an improvement over the Blue Ranger one, because at least the squeaking is not that well, yeah, you can hear a little bit some squeaks on the legs, but it's not as loud, or, well, this leg doesn't do the squeaking, but this one does, so at least it's slightly better than the Blue Ranger one. Whereas Black, on the other hand, has only one leg that does a plastic squeak, whereas Blue does it on both of his legs. So I'm sorry that they had to do that to you, Billy. But with Zach / Adam, only one leg does a squeak. This doesn't do no squeak, well, a louder squeak. The legs, I mean, the arms you can do more articulation with, yeah, and of course, like with, you know, Pink and Blue, Black has the silver belt, and this is the last time they ever did that mistake. Before I do get the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Black Ranger, of course, you know, speaking of which, I have to break it to you, but for those who would like a Mighty Morphin Black Ranger from Hasbro, I know some people based on some people's preference, I don't mean to be a douche about this, but if you really want a Black Ranger, like if you wanted, like, simply, what I would do when they do a, when they do put out a regular Mighty Morphin Black Ranger for the Lightning line, what I would do if I get the armored Black Ranger one or so, I would just basically just take off the Dragon Shield and the armbands of the Dragon Shield off the Black Ranger, and then I go, just already got myself a regular Mighty Morphin Black with Zach's head, and there you go. But even though by the time I do get a Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Black Ranger, but then if I get the armored one and then the regular comes out, will that feel pretty pointless? I don't know, but basically, I actually like this version of the Black Ranger from not Hasbro, Bandai. I mean, I actually thought Bandai was on point on MMPR, but of course, Lightning Collection is a lot better because it has more articulation and stuff, and doesn't have any certain paint issues to piss off those purists of this group. And I actually thought Bandai did a solid job capturing the essence of the Mighty Morphin Black / Sentai term Mammoth Ranger Goshi Mammoth Ranger in his helmet, because basically for some reason outside of the Blue Ranger and of the core group, growing up when I was a little boy, I had more admirations on the Black Ranger suit, because the Black Ranger suit is so awesome and bumping, man. And because, also I remember when I was a little kid growing up back in the Mighty Morphin era, when I was only like a 2-year-old, I had a few Black Ranger toys along with a Blue Ranger thing too. I just like the Black Ranger suit a lot more. The Mastodon helmet, it just looks so cool, and because it's just something about the Black Ranger just looks sick. He looks so badass and stuff. I mean, nothing against blue, but I just like black more than blue, because even though I did remember back when I was a kid growing up with MMPR, for Halloween costumes, I used to be the original Blue Ranger for Halloween when I was a little boy, when I was only like a year or 2 years, a year old, 2 years old, when MMPR was still on. Even back when MMPR went on for 3 years, I was still the original Blue Ranger for Halloween, or whatever. But you see, the thing is with the Blue and Black Rangers, is that they both have the silver belts. I wish they fixed that, but they did fix that when we got those metallic figures in them with the weapons. Well, when we get to the Red Ranger in a few minutes, but I do like the fact that they did improve on the Black Ranger than the Blue Ranger with the leg, squeaking, but this still gets the squeaky leg, while this doesn't, does that as much, but this leg does it a lot louder, and that's irritating. But whereas on Blue, it just grates on your mind. Why did they do Billy like that? Shame on you, Bandai. Shame on you. That's why I wait until I get the Lightning Collection figures. I don't mean to knock Billy down like that. I'm just, I'm just disappointed that they gave Billy squeaky legs. Like, what the heck, guys? Seriously, Bandai America? Even when you guys still had this franchise for toys and stuff, why did y'all do it? Why? And also, yeah, he just plays the same like everybody else, but yeah, and when I do get the in-space Black Ranger, if this was Adam as the Black Ranger and I got the Black Space Ranger, which being Carlos, then that way we would have had Always a Chance already. Basically recreating that episode a little bit when I get the Black Space Ranger for Carlos, and then this being Adam and Carlos in black, basically. Even though most people will see it as Zach, some will see it as Adam, but I say it's either a bit of both. Yeah, Zach was the Black Ranger first, and then Adam a little, Adam later. But again, that's the Black Ranger. Sorry I took that long to get to the point after rambling on about the other four, but I'm going to do even more rambling on our last Ranger of the core group before we go to Tommy. Yeah, Jason / Rocky, the Red Ranger, but I will always prefer Jason as the original Red Ranger more than Rocky. Nothing wrong with Rocky, but the only time he's the Red Ranger to me with this suit is when he had the Ape Ninja Zord and the Shogun Zord, and yeah, that's about it. But again, we will always prefer Jason as the original Red Ranger more than Rocky. That's saying much. Now, I also want to let everyone know that this is not the regular painted Red Ranger like the rest of all of these guys, like black, blue, yellow, and pink, for example. This is a Red Ranger that I bought, luckily enough for those who don't know. This is the Red Ranger that came with finally his power sword, but we'll get it before we get to his figure. Now, although the power sword is a little bent, even after playing it for a while, or haven't played it for a while, I like the way how they nicely put some detail on the power sword this time as opposed to his past legacy toys, the 5-inch ones, because, for this is a lot bigger. When I get the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Red Ranger, I'll see if it's any compatible with the you know, but even though of course the Lightning Collection has all the weapons. And also another thing I forgot to mention when I even long started this review, if you notice, a lot of these legacy figures, they hardly ever came with their weapons, and that was another thing that a lot of Mighty Morphin fans see. It seems like Bandai can re-release MMPR's legacy figures like this with their weapons, but they couldn't do it for Xeonos because, Mighty Morphin is what they cared about the most, and so do the rest of us. But it seems like for a lot of these legacy figures, even like from the promo images, you can get their Blade Blaster and a Megazord piece, but you don't want to give. But this is why they had to re-release these, but even though with metallic painting, making it look like the metallic armor again, those glitter suits from season 3, and give us their weapons. And I know my power sword is a little bent and a little wrecked, but yeah, you can give us their Blade Blaster and their Megazord piece, but that's why people had to recollect these figures, just only the 5 Rangers and not the Green Ranger. Green Ranger is fine, he has both his weapons, Sword of Darkness if he was possessed by Rita again, and his Dragon Dagger, and the White Ranger just being, well, of course, with his Saba. But for the 5 main Rangers, the original 5, you had to get all 5 Rangers again in order to get their weapons, because... yeah, and also I like the way how they did their, speaking of which, their power sword, because for this legacy figure, even though it's the same one, if I were to get the Dragon Dagger, if I were to get the Dragon Shielded Red Ranger legacy figure before the license ran out, you see when you look at the legacy figure in comparison, it looks Jason looks a lot battle ready with this weapon. See, if I were to buy these figures in this variant with their weapons, basically, this is what the figures should have been, because instead of giving them sidearms and Megazord pieces, this is why Bandai really dropped the ball in these figures, because instead of giving the Rangers their weapons, you just give them again sidearm and Megazord piece. I know I'm repeating myself, sorry guys, but it just proves my point, because you look at this. This is exactly what we should have gotten when we got these legacy figures when they were announced back in 2016, because at least with, like, let's say Ninja Storm, you can get all of their ninja swords and that other weapon they had that's on their backs. But with Mighty Morphin, okay, with Tommy's Ranger figures, you can get his weapons as the Green and White Rangers, but why was this an issue when you had to collect the original 5, that being Jason, Zach, Trini, Billy, and Kimberly's figures for this line? Back when these figures were available, you had to get the basic figures where you get the Megazord piece, and then you get the second edition figures while they were in this metallic piece, where this metallic variant, in order to get the weapons. That made no sense to me. Luckily, when I do collect the Lightning Collection, and I mean it, when I do get the Lightning Collection figures of them, and I will do it, I promise you, at least the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin figures do come with their weapons finally, and also of course their civilian heads. I will get to the civilian heads later. You see, I like that they did do these figures, but it was just not good enough. And like I said about the legacy figures, and I know I've been droning on about MMPR, because basically I know MMPR is going to take up all my time, because I really want to showcase what I had been doing for the last 2 years after not doing any new Power Ranger toy reviews since my, again, 5-in-1 2017 movie Megazord review. But see, and even though when I do the Lightning Collection figures, I'm going to do some certain poses and compare how they look better. And since this is the metallic Mighty Morphin Red Ranger, but look at the translucence of him. If I was to put some light to him, like for instance an image of the Red Ranger, you can see some light. You can do a see-through of light onto, and that's another thing I've noticed about these figures. Something that's made of that's translucent metallic. You can get all this light and see all of that on him, and that's something that was indigenous to me with this figure. Yeah, and this is the first time I ever used that word indigenous in my videos. But now about something I wanted to complain over about the Mighty Morphin Red Ranger for over the years. When you look at the Mighty Morphin Red Ranger, when you look at the head sculpt, let's bring him up a bit and put on the focus. For so many years, I've seen the original Red Ranger get so many action figure treatments, and he will continue to get more action figure treatments. When it comes to his Tyrannosaurus visor, they somehow just can't get the visor more accurate to how, like, for instance, you look at the Red Ranger's visor. This is what the Red Ranger's visor always looked like on the show and Sentai footage and so forth, and look how more accurate the visor always looked. But for some reason, every single Mighty Morphin Red Ranger toy, and also this is my 4th Mighty Morphin Red Ranger toy in a row, where the visor doesn't look as much accurate. And I know sometimes accuracy doesn't mean anything for this Red Ranger, but it seems like when it's black, blue, pink, yellow, green, and white Mighty Morphin, they can get the visors on them right. But for the Red Ranger, I get the Tyrannosaurus visor is a little too big to do, so that's why they have to make it so incy squincy small. Now let's compare this Red Ranger with all my other Mighty Morphin Reds that I've bought from Bandai before I do Hasbro. This here was what I already reviewed as a separate review when I tried to collect the 5-inch Legacy Mighty Morphin. And I'm surprised that the Legacy figure of this was a lot smaller. And this is the Red Ranger Mighty Morphin Red that I reviewed back when I did a few of those Action Hero Red Ranger figures from Super Mega Force, which I couldn't do. And of course, this is my 1995 movie Red Ranger. And just look at my Mighty Morphin Red collection so far. Focus, focus, focus. Okay, see that? Now this is now 4 Mighty Morphin Reds in a row. I wish I had more of the Red Mighty Morphin Ranger, like a Automorphin Flip Head for archival purposes, a Super Legends Mighty Morphin Red, a regular non-legacy. Yeah, and that's another thing I hated about the legacy figures. They didn't have that much articulation, you know, the standing stances. Then you have the 1995 movie Legacy figures, plus the original 1995 movie, you know, toys of the Red Ranger, and also the original 5-inch regular toys, especially even the flip heads. And then those big inch figures of MMPR Red from the original Mighty Morphin toy line. You know, those big bulky looking Mighty Morphin Power Ranger figures with the way how their heads look back in the 90s, those Karate Chop Red Ranger ones. And it's like, it's just crazy. We had so many versions of the original Red Ranger over the years. And wow, I mean, I have only 4 versions of the original Red Ranger. I mean, although this from Super Mega Force, this is what I reviewed 4 years ago. If you saw that, my 1995 movie Red Ranger, and then now this Legacy Collection Mighty Morphin Red. And when I get the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin Red Ranger from Hasbro, that will be my 5th Mighty Morphin Red. And it's crazy that the legacy of power with the Red Ranger just continues to grow, especially the original Red Ranger. Because now I'm going to put these guys away just to show a comparison how far my collection of Mighty Morphin Red has gone so far. But it seems like, again, the visor on him is supposed to be like how it's supposed to look on the show. And there you go. And now the helmet sculpt I'm fine with, but the visor on the Red Ranger, and also that's why also if you remember those SH figure arts, I mean, when I saw the figure art of the Mighty Morphin Red Ranger, I didn't like the way how they did the Tyrannosaurus visor on that one. And also I never, you know, to be honest guys, I'm one of those in the minority that doesn't care about those figure arts, although they are very superior. But then once Lightning Collection Hasbro's Lightning Collection came along, it just blew this and the figure arts out of the water. But that's saying much. Now that I got all 5 of the original, the original 5 Rangers, okay, and I'm gonna get them out, you know, and do the original 5 together before I start on Tommy, everyone's favorite Ranger. Sorry, leg is, I mean the foot is pivoted and not standing adjacently. Now you look at this, and I finally got all 5 of the original MMPRs before Tommy, and I will get the Tommy in a couple seconds. And just look at that. Now, although if I had blue, pink, yellow, and black in the same variant as red in order to get the weapon, like Jason's power sword, then I would have gave these guys weapons also. And then that's another thing I missed out when I talked about blue, black, pink, and yellow earlier, because I forgot to mention about giving, you know, if I were, you know, to do, but I don't want to drag the review on too long, even though I've been talking about MMPR for like almost how many minutes now at the time of the edited version of this video and recording. But now that I got the original 5, now let's talk about Tommy. Before we get to everyone's favorite version of Tommy, I want to talk about my favorite version of Tommy from MMPR. Tiger Zord, White Ranger power! With Tommy as the White Ranger in his legacy figure. I hope I gotta get the focus on it. Excuse me, folks. Or maybe I should... Wait, I almost had the focus. Sorry about that. You know, the camera likes to screw with me. Okay, now Tommy's White Ranger legacy figure. It's good, but it wasn't, you know... Like I said before, I mean, and also, like the Blue Ranger and Black Rangers, you get the squeaky legs on the White Ranger. But it's minor, which is good, but see, basically, I've always been more into the White Ranger suit because simply, even though this suit is from a totally different Sentai from Zyuranger and MMPR, but, you know, knowing to the fact I have seen Dairanger, even though I've seen Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, you know, more than their Sentai counterparts first, and then when I stumbled across Sentai and saw some differences with how they were done in Sentai versus Power Rangers, and then seeing to the fact that the White Ranger came from Gosei Sentai Dairanger, the Sentai where Mighty Morphin Season 2 got the Thunder Zords and the White Ranger from, in Serpentera and Tor, and some of the monsters from Lord Zed. It's nice that they actually threw in a White Ranger costume because it was very distinctive, you know, to match the feel of the show. Plus, it really was more, you know, part of the lineage of Power Rangers lore because, you know, even though as much as I minded and wished that the Dairanger suits were to be part of Power Rangers officially instead of being thrown in as those so-called Squadron Rangers in Super Mega Force. But, you see, personally, this Mighty Morphin White Ranger figure, you know, I didn't really care for the SH Figure Art one. I actually liked the Legacy one because the Legacy one was cheaper, and even when I get the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin White, it's much more cheaper and it's much more authentic. But since this is one of the last few Mighty Morphin figures that have the muscle build before we go to more screen accurate, less muscular, TV authentic Mighty Morphin when I do those figures, I will do that. But you see, now I really admired the Mighty Morphin White Ranger's legacy figure a lot more before the Lightning Collection one came out. It's just simply the reason why I, you know, when I do Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin White is that I was just so passive aggressive toward the way how the color of the gold on his suit look and the gold stuff over the tiger helmet, and some of the gold on Saba that Hasbro did on him. But it's just, I actually liked the Bandai's figure, but yeah, it wasn't good or was perfect or any means. But now that the more I look back on it, I just wanted to show off some imperfected flaws on these figures. And knowing the fact now, at least unlike some Rangers with their weapons, at least Saba, and when I get to the Green Ranger in a few minutes, at least the White Ranger has his weapon. So it seems like, how come for some reason when Bandai did these figures for the Legacy line, for Mighty Morphin Zeo and Dino Thunder, they can give Tommy his weapons like Saba for the White Ranger, Dragon Dagger, and the Sword of Darkness for the Green Ranger, and the Brachio Staff for the Dino Thunder Black Ranger for Tommy. But when it was Red Zeo, and I will get to Red Zeo since I've been hanging on Mighty Morphin for taking up most of people's time, is that, you know, they can give the Green, White, and Black Ranger Tommies the weapons, but Red Zeo just gets 2 sidearms. Shame. I know there was a Fighting Spirit 3-pack of Tommy from the Legacy line by Bandai that has the Zeo 5 sword of his, but again, it's just they just only give for the retail release of the Red Zeo Ranger the sidearm, which sucks. And anyway, I like the Mighty Morphin White Ranger for what it is, but it's not good enough. And although I think when I look at it now, especially when you look at this figure on camera, the gold on him is good when on camera, but when you're not on camera with this, the gold looks pretty bland. And you know, although I like some of the shimmer on it, but the shimmer isn't much of a spectacle on the shield, but it's slightly a premium spectacle on the helmet. and especially on the Saba sword. Personally, I actually prefer the Saba that Bandai did for the Legacy one over the Lightning Collection one. And now let's do a comparison of the White Ranger figures I had so far. As you can see, I know this piece just keeps falling off. This is the White Ranger that I had from the Mega Forces toy line. I did do a review on this armored White Ranger. And of course, this is my Saba-less, shoulder padded-less Legacy 1995 movie White Ranger without the shoulder pads. And so far, I only have 3 Mighty Morphin White Ranger toys as opposed to 4 of Mighty Morphin Red. Because when you think about it, like I said, I'm trying to build up my MMPR collection, because growing up as a kid, I didn't have a lot of Mighty Morphin stuff, but I've had stuff for other seasons, and that just goes to show what kind of Power Rangers fan am I for not doing more Mighty Morphin like the millions of people out there. But see, it just goes to show how entitled I've been in most of my 20s, as I'm pushing 30 and still, complaining about it. And when you think about it also, when you can, when I do the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin White and see who had the better Saba sword, when I look at the Armored White Ranger, I know this is what I reviewed 5 years ago before I moved to this apartment 5 years ago. I've noticed that Saba's tail tip is shorter, whereas Saba's tail tip for this is more accurate and longer. Even though I would say that when I get the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin White Ranger, the Saba tip, Saba's blade tip, facing him upward down, just showing the blade of his sword. The Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin White is just like this with how they did Saba, and also, yeah, and even like the Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin White Ranger, Saba doesn't have from this Armored White Ranger from Mega Forces toy line. And I know his armored pieces are just, this is why I think when I look back on this 5 years later after I got this, even though I was supposed to get that Legacy 5-inch White Ranger that was the same scale as these Legacy figures of the movie Rangers and stuff, when I got this, I ended up getting this instead of the Legacy one. And when the Amazon seller I got this from 5 years ago, a long time ago, got my order, I ended up getting this instead, and I didn't know I was going to get this, but I minded this White Ranger, but it's not good enough. And also, just look at how much muscle mass is to this one as opposed to the Legacy one. At least the Legacy one has leaner muscle, but when I had this White Ranger from the from Mega Forces toy line for the 20th anniversary, there was just way too much muscle on this when I look at this now in retrospect. No wonder Hasbro decided, let's not do muscular looking Power Rangers. We need to make them more real world and more authentic. And this is why for the last 25 years we've been sticking with muscular looking Power Rangers and on to something more lifelike like the Lightning Collection. But again, when I do the Lightning Collection figures in the future for Mighty Morphin, I'm going to see why these will blow the Bandai White Rangers and other Mighty Morphin characters out of the water. So now that I have all of the White Ranger figures that I could from Bandai and all the Red Rangers I could from Bandai, on to Tommy's OG color that everyone loves. And my last Mighty Morphin Legacy figure, the granddaddy figure of all of them, everyone's favorite version of Tommy as the original Green Ranger, Dragon Zord. Yeah, I know, I did that before in my Legacy Dragon Zord review, I know. Now, here's my history with this version of Tommy as the Green Ranger. Growing up, I didn't have a lot of Green Ranger stuff. It wasn't until last year, before the license with Bandai expired and when we were moving on to Hasbro and transitioning from Bandai to Hasbro, I never had a lot of Green Ranger toys growing up until now, up till this point. So this, my friends, is my first Mighty Morphin Green Ranger toy. Because specifically, I didn't have a lot of Green Ranger stuff growing up. Because, to be honest though, and you know how passive aggressive I'd been, toward the Green Ranger, I just, especially as I got older, I just realized every time, just thinking about all this pop culture, 90s nostalgia stuff for Power Rangers, you know, and particularly MMPR. It's always been about the Green Ranger. When people associate Mighty Morphin, it's always the Green Ranger on everything. But now it's time for me to shut the fuck up about that and realize the Green Ranger is the greatest. And even though I still have a soft spot for the White Ranger, you know, a certain place in my heart, it's just the thing is the Green Ranger is where everything cemented Power Rangers for the broad public and the audience. Because if it weren't for this version of Tommy, we wouldn't have the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, the White Ranger right now. Or Tommy is the Red Zeo Ranger, or Tommy is Dino Thunder Black, or Red Turbo, or Lord Drakkon in the comics. But, you know, Lord Drakkon is only in the comics, not in the TV show. Get over it. But, you know, I actually think out of all of the Mighty Morphin figures, you know, as much as I like Trini's legacy figure, but personally, I actually think the Green Ranger figure is a lot better because this is the best of the bunch. Before I get the Lightning Collection, Mighty Morphin Green Ranger, which is the fighting spirit, and when they do a regular green, basically, I actually think the legacy figure of the Green Ranger was just accurate and just perfect to me. But it's personally, you know, I think this changed my perception of, you know, I think the reason why I was talking so much crap about the Green Ranger and some of this merch is because, again, due to the fact that knowing me long before I even got this or anything MMPR related, it's because, you know how I was. I've been such a jerk to MMPR lately because I think it has to do due to my childhood trauma and due to my childhood misery of not having a lot of Mighty Morphin stuff growing up. Because I was a little kid, so that's why I grew up on Zeo and them. Because, again, MMPR came out when I was only a year old, 2 years old, so I don't have that much nostalgia for MMPR, but I remember MMPR. I watched nearly every episode growing up as a little kid. So I wasn't that elementary school, middle school age when MMPR came out in the 90s. I was right around the time when Power Rangers just debuted. So I was a little thumb-sucking baby when Mighty Morphin aired, and then the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, and all of them came out. So... And also, long before I started the review, if you forgot what the legacy boxes look like before we start getting those glorious looking Hasbro Lightning Collection boxes, now this is what the legacy boxes looked like, but this is why, well, I had the other boxes for the other Rangers, but I threw them away because they were taking up too much space in my closet or in my apartment. So I threw them away. So I only have the Green Ranger box, the White Ranger box, the Red Zeo box, because I want to do the Tommy box collection, but... no, I don't want to be indigenous about Tommy. And also, due to the fact I showed you guys all my figures that came with the, well, I do have the Megazord pieces for the Dino Megazord with me, but I don't have the regular Red Ranger in order to get this to form this Build a Megazord figure. Maybe I'll do that in a separate review when I do get a regular Mighty Morphin Red Ranger. Probably, I don't know. Probably off of eBay if anyone still has one. But yeah. But the Green Ranger, I've been wanting to get a Green Ranger figure. And also, when the Legacy line was announced, the Legacy Collection, this was my chance to get a Mighty Morphin Green Ranger. But, you know, knowing me being an asshole, 24-year-old in 2016 talking shit about the Green Ranger and everyone's fascination on him as the Green Ranger, I gotta realize the Green Ranger is an icon. And like an icon of pop culture, much like the rest of MMPR. But... it's just the Green Ranger, why do you think he's the only one with a 5-part storyline that debuted the Tommy Oliver character and cemented Jason David Frank to the pop culture consciousness as an actor of Power Rangers and a massive Power Ranger legend? If it weren't for Tommy, we wouldn't have Power Rangers. If it weren't for the Green Ranger, MMPR wouldn't be as big as it was 25 plus years ago, going on 30 soon. If it weren't for the Greenwood Evil saga, we wouldn't have all these other multi-parters of MMPR, like Ninja Quest, Power Transfer, White Light, Chaining of the Zords, the Master Vile 3-parter, so forth. And the Return of the Green Ranger storyline, even in Season 2 after Rita and Zed's wedding 3-parter. So, and then also, if it weren't for the Green Ranger, and again, if it weren't for Tommy as the Green Ranger, we wouldn't have Tommy as the White Ranger right now. So I have to shut the heck up about how I'm all about the White Ranger, Yeah, everybody can have the green, I'll stick with white, but you see, that just goes to show how much of a douche I've been toward the Green Ranger lately because of this nostalgia for MMPR and stuff because I'm just annoyed by it. But I have to shut up and accept that if it weren't for also MMPR, I wouldn't have any of my favorite seasons of Power Rangers by now. Now I know for casuals who only care about Mighty Morphin, if I'm just doing this video specifically for you out there, I would do so and just ignore the Zeo portion after this video's over. Like, here I am, 2020, going back to my old ways again. And a little bit. But even though I'm getting a little too old for that, and I have to change my attitude before I turn 30 with that. Anyway, I love the Green Ranger figure. It's perfect. And it's just a matter of fact, I actually think that when I, get these figures from Hasbro, since Bandai's figures were fine. They were fine, but they were not fine or great enough. And they tried to give us some decent figures and stuff, but it's about time that we actually... it was about time I actually start doing these guys again when I do the Hasbro figures. Since I finally got all 7 Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, what do I got to say about these? Now, I would say Mighty Morphin, I don't want to be a nostalgia bias person like everyone, millions out there, but as a fan of the entire franchise, the Mighty Morphin figures Bandai did were good and they were fine, but even though if they would have never... did some mishaps on some of the painting on the pink, black, and blue Rangers, I would have accepted these figures a lot more. And then, but then of course I have to do Lightning Collection because that's what everyone is doing nowadays. See, I know I came way too late to the party with the Legacy figures. That's my bad, folks, ladies and gentlemen. But that's just true. So now that I got all the Mighty Morphin figures, so overall, these figures were good, but I just wish wish they could have done better with them, since after all. Oh yeah, and Sword of Darkness, nice sculpt of the Sword of Darkness. I like it. Anyway, but they did a good job on mostly of all the Rangers, but it's just, again, they were just not all that great in terms of some articulation, because some of the articulation is limited. And the way how they done some of the characters, because it's due to the fact that Mighty Morphin was the high demanded line of characters most collectors wanted, and particularly general casual fans who only cared about Power Rangers back when these guys were on the air. And I understand, I don't blame you Mighty Morphin fans out there, and as a fan of the entire franchise, I have been wanting to get my hands on all of these characters as much as possible. And even though, again, these figures were not perfect, but when I do the Lightning Collection, when I do all 7 of them, then I'll see that, yeah, these were way better than the Legacy, because after all, Legacy was good, but like I said, again, they were not good enough. But I would say of all the figures of the Legacy, I know, it seems like as soon as when Hasbro took over, it's hard to distinguish Lightning Collection with the Legacy Collection sometimes for me, because knowing the fact last year Hasbro just started putting out their stuff for Power Rangers, and Bandai it was time to say farewell to Bandai, because after all the times I talked so much garbage about them for the last almost decade since they did the 2010 Mighty Morphin toy line up until the 20th anniversary, Megaforce, 2017 movie, so forth. I just wish that I need to change my perception and attitude on some of Bandai's Power Rangers stuff, even if we have so much Mighty Morphin from them, and even right now with Hasbro again. But at least, unlike these figures, at least Hasbro's Lightning Collection Mighty Morphin will have all the Rangers and all the villains, and hopefully we'll get Ninjor and the Alien Rangers out as well for the Lightning Collection when those come out. Because, then again, this is why it took a long time for me to get this. And basically, this is what I've been doing for the last 2 years after I stopped doing toy reviews. I mean, I kind of quit doing toy reviews because, again, money, and also it took a long time. It took a lot of time and effort and money, even if it costed me an arm and a leg to get all 7 of the original Mighty Morphin. Because I need to get my Mighty Morphin collection going, because I know I've been too much of a douche to MMPR lately, and I think it was time to stop. Anyway, final thoughts for Mighty Morphin before I go to Zeo, because this review is kind of going on a little long. I'm getting a little lightheaded and stuff. Because after, you know, basically, these figures were good. I like them. But wait until when I do the Lightning collection. These will blow this out of the water. Although I would say the best of the bunch was basically Tommy's green and white Ranger figures. I know this is just me being a JDF Tommy Oliver fanboy, but slightly. But I would say the Green Ranger, since of the fact the Green Ranger, let me try to stand the White Ranger back up again. With the Green Ranger, this one I had a hard time trying to collect when these figures were available. When I was on Amazon, the Mighty Morphin Green Ranger Legacy figure was bought up by so many diehard collectors back when these figures first came out. I didn't have enough money, or I didn't have the money to get the Green Ranger, because I didn't want a lot of collectors, or maybe, I know this is me sounding like a narcissist, sorry guys, but I was just so frustrated that a lot of diehard collectors were buying up the Green Ranger because I never owned it one. But now that I got the Green Ranger since last year following the White Ranger, I now have all 7 Mighty Morphin Rangers. So basically something from my childhood has been, been cured. Childhood trauma and missing that I never got these as, I know I sound like I'm crying a little bit, but I'm just happy that I finally got all 7 of these. But when I do Hasbro's Lightning collection, I'm going to even more be happier than ever, because I have to realize, as a 90s kid, and a Power Rangers fan, I'm happy. I'm finally happy I got all 7 Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I am. Because, again, these figures, were not perfect, but I like them. Despite some articulation issues with the Pink Ranger, but, and the silver stripes, silver belts, but, and them lacking weapons, but even though I only have the Red Ranger with a weapon, I wish I had the others. But it's great. It's real great, guys. Real great. Now Mighty Morphin is done. Time we go Zeo.